try to keep it just for a year. This is like the 1 year contract. Well, so where are you physically going? I met this guy. I answer all my social media contracts.
Good morning. The subcommittee will come to order. I want to thank everyone for being here today to discuss the Veterans Readiness and Employment Program, or VR&E. But before I get started, I would like to take a moment of just to thank you so much, Kate, for helping me get through these things as a rookie dude. And she's still going to be with the VA committee, obviously, but she's going to be kind of more of a broad general counsel for everybody, right? So I really want to applaud you. You're a consummate professional, and you are the reason that this subcommittee and this committee is, I think, the most functional committee in the entire House of Representatives. So thank you very much. Okay, now it's time to be mean. That was a joke. Sorry. Mike thought it was funny. The purpose of this program is to assist veterans and service members who have service-connected disabilities with on-the-job training and skills they need in order to obtain meaningful employment or achieve maximum independent living. When this program is appropriately administered, VR&E is more than just a benefits program. It's also a vital first step for disabled veterans to become more financially independent, give back to their community, and achieve their own American dream. And to my knowledge, I believe I'm the only member of Congress that has actually utilized this program. And so I know it inside and out from soup to nuts. However, we are at a crossroads, and I believe right now that VR&E program is going in the wrong direction. Since 2015, Republicans on the subcommittee have been concerned about VR&E's previous IT failures that have cost the government millions of dollars. Other IT failures in VA have cost taxpayers billions, and we cannot let VR&E be the latest IT project to become one of these failures. I recognize that VR&E's latest IT project, the Readiness Employment System, or RES, was launched as a pilot a few months ago, and early reports showed that the program has been received well. This is encouraging news, but the IG said in our last hearing that the VA has a track record of difficulty implementing major IT systems. They almost without fail take longer, and they take replans. I know the VA states that they are finally on the right path with this new case management system. However, I'm skeptical as this undertaking will now span the term of 4 administrations. I just want to say that again. This project is spanning 4 administrations, and it's not done yet. It's very frustrating and a disservice to our veterans and VA employees who have badly needed this IT system for nearly a decade. I expect to hear today about VA's REST program, progress, and who will be held accountable if this IT update fails yet again. I'd also like to hear from the VA about data tracking, performance, and checks and balances in VR&E. The PACT Act has led to an amazing increase in participants of increase of nearly 30%. And however, now we're seeing increased wait times and an increased burden on counselors and higher caseloads. There has to be a better balance of priorities in the program to make sure a veteran gets what they need, while also ensuring that the VA is responsible stewards of taxpayers' investment. A responsibility that I find VA has a profound and consistent inability to perform. We've heard from one school that a veteran has been attending classes for over a decade, and at the cost of over $700,000 for a single veteran, and it's a direct result of counselors getting waivers for the VR&E recipients well over 99% of the time. So this person consistently just got waiver after waiver after waiver after waiver for a total of over $700,000, and to my knowledge, they don't have a degree yet, do they? Yeah, the cost for a medical school, just to put this in context, is about $355,000 to become a physician. Just throwing that out there. In fact, the VA told us last month, we had a meeting yesterday, that since the fiscal year 2020, there's been 39,904 extensions that were approved, and only 59 of the requests for extensions were denied, and that is truly absurd. It's statistically impossible that all of those extensions were appropriate. I'm looking forward to hearing from the VA about the real-life examples their constituents that constitute granting a waiver. On paper, bureaucrats may just be completing a check-in-the-box exercise instead of completing a thoughtful review of each case. Additionally, we've heard numerous concerns about long wait time. 65% of regional offices take over a month for a veteran to meet with the counselor for an initial evaluation. And my friend and ranking member's regional office in San Diego, the average is 158 days for a veteran to meet a counselor for an initial evaluation. And again, that is just absurd. A month is too long, but making a veteran put their life on hold for nearly half a year before even being seen by a counselor is ridiculous. It has a negative effect on their lives, it has a negative effect on our society, it has a negative effect on the VA. And I know the VA is going to say that RAS will fix the backlog, but it's time to stop putting the blame on failed IT projects and start looking for answers rather than throwing more money at the problem. If these problems exist at VR&E, they're going to become a crisis again in the future VA because it is estimated that there will be a 61% increase in veterans receiving monetary benefits from 2023 to 2026. And finally, I want to hear from the VA the steps that they're planning on taking to improve the Vet Success on Campus, or VSOC program, and how my bill, H.R. 8648, Modernizing the Veteran On-Campus Experience Act of 2024, would continue to make more improvements. With that, I now yield to the ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank the chairman. I want to thank him for holding this hearing, and want to thank him for the last 2 years of great partnership, working together, trying to serve our veterans as best we can, and we've gotten a lot done. And there's so much more to do, and I think today's hearing will uncover just one of the programs that needs a lot of work. And I share many of the chairman's concerns about VR&E. I want to emphasize also its continued importance. It's so critically important that we aim to prepare veterans with service-connected disabilities for life after military service. VR&E provides essential services to service members and veterans who are unable to find or maintain employment due to service-connected disabilities. It offers job training, a variety of employment-related support to help them secure a job, assists veterans in achieving maximum independence in their daily lives when the severity of their disabilities prevents them from working. And in fiscal year 2023, the program served over 131,000 service members and veterans and paid out $1.6 billion in benefits. VR&E benefits are administered at regional offices across the country. The program has counselors located at colleges and universities to assist veterans during their transition to civilian life, and counselors located at 70 military installations to assist transitioning service members. So I'm very glad we're holding this hearing today. It's one of the VA's oldest and most impactful programs, but my experience over the 6 years I've been in Congress is it never really has received the attention that it's deserved. In fact, since I joined the committee, I've noticed several issues that have impacted the program. One of the very first hearings that I held as chairman of the subcommittee in 2019 was to find out why participation in VRE was so low. And things have really changed in 6 years. We're now hearing understaffing is the problem. And in my district, as the chairman said, we've heard that veterans have to wait for approximately 15 to 18 months for an initial appointment. That is simply unacceptable. That is simply unacceptable, 15 to 18 months. We can't expect service members and veterans to put their lives on hold for nearly a year and a half to wait for an appointment. In addition, VR&E still has not developed and implemented modernization efforts for digital case management systems, despite 2 previously failed attempts. So I look forward to an update on the status of the case management system and its development. I know the program has been working to modernize VR&E, reduce the administrative burden on counselors. I would be remiss if I didn't raise concerns we're also hearing from veterans, school certifying officials, or SCOs, and our VSOs, some of whom I see in the back. Veterans and SCOs both expressed concerns with consistent communication and regular contact with VR&E counselors. VSOs have also raised concerns about unrealistic deadlines for veterans to select an employment goal, which could lead to the closure of a veteran's case. When a veteran is found entitled to VR&E, they start collaborating with their counselor to determine the essential services needed for success in the program. Rushing through the initial process isn't going to produce a positive outcome. Last Congress, I led legislation that was signed into law that expanded access to self-employment opportunities through VR&E. This expansion was intended to support veterans as they started their own small businesses. So I'm eager to learn about the program's efforts in recruitment and retention, as well as the expansion of hiring criteria to attract more counselors. I also look forward to hearing from our witnesses on the challenges in both hiring and retaining of staff. For example, we heard from a veteran who experienced 3 changes in counselors in 1 year. 3 changes in counselors in 1 year. We got to do better than that. VR&E is unique because it offers support that's tailored to each veteran's unique needs. However, I have concerns about insufficient staffing and the quality and consistency of the services being provided. I'm sure the chairman would agree every veteran who faces long wait times to access VR&E might end up abandoning the program, missing out on the benefits they've earned. It only further deters veterans from considering the program. So look, the VR&E program, I continue to believe, is vital in honoring the sacrifices of veterans by providing them with the tools and the opportunities to lead fulfilling lives, but we've got to do better than we're doing. Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Levin. I'll now introduce our witness panel. Our first witness is Mr. Nick Pamperin, Executive Director of Veterans Readiness and Employment at the Veterans Benefits Administration. Mr. Pamperin is accompanied by Mr. Kenneth Smith, Assistant Deputy Undersecretary, Operations Management Team, and the Veterans Benefit Administration. I'll ask the witnesses please to stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Mr. Pamperin, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good morning, Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Levin, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Department of Veterans Affairs Veteran Readiness and Employment Program today. I'm accompanied today by Mr. Ken Smith, Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for Operations. The mission of VR&E is to assist those who have a service-connected disability and an employment barrier, prepare for, find, and maintain suitable employment, or live independently. The VR&E program is a vital benefit, helping veterans and service members explore employment opportunities, find new skills, or address educational or training needs. This can be learning new skills through traditional schooling, finding a new job, returning to an old employer, starting a business, or getting educational counseling. Due to increased outreach and the expansion of PACT Act benefits, VR&E has seen tremendous growth in program applicants, over 44% since the implementation of the PACT Act. At the beginning of FY24, VR&E had approximately 134,000 active participants, which grew to over 174,000 by the end of the fiscal year. VR&E provided support to over 297,000 veterans and service members and paid out over $2.1 billion in benefits last fiscal year. VR&E also assisted over 17,000 individuals successfully obtain employment or improve their independence in living. While the VR&E program has experienced significant growth, field staff continue to perform at high levels. In fiscal year 24, 17,123 positive outcomes were achieved, exceeding the goals. Field staff additionally have demonstrated sound fiscal judgment with their use of taxpayer dollars, achieving a 95.8% fiscal accuracy score in FY24. Additionally, 99% of VR&E payments are made in less than 30 days due to the implementation of the invoice payment and processing system. To improve service to veterans and efficiencies within the VR&E program, VR&E set out on a path for the future by introducing the 6-point plan. The 6-point plan was designed to promote continuous improvement in service delivery, streamline internal processing, and leverage technology. As part of this plan, VR&E expanded the educational requirements for who can serve as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, or a VRC, to accept an additional 5 master's degrees. This change has allowed VR&E to fill critical positions with qualified applicants, with all expanded degrees being recognized by the credentialing body for rehabilitative counseling, the Commission on Rehabilitative Counseling Certification. VR&E also added a new position to the field, the Vocational Rehabilitation Specialist, or VRS, whose duties include performing routine tasks and basic but critical case management duties. The addition of this position has freed up counselors, allowing them to spend additional time with veterans. In FY23 and 24, VR&E increased staff by 24%, adding 483 field staff in the last 2 fiscal years, 372 FTE last year alone. While this expansion and the addition of the increased staffing has helped VA respond to the dramatic program growth, we continue to need additional resources to be compliant with the legislative 1-to-125 requirement. In terms of improving processes through technological modernization, VR&E has completed its modernization of the electronic virtual assistant platform. This three-phase effort deployed electronic signature capability for veterans and counselors, reducing time takes to receive signed documents from 10 days to just 2, and also eliminated over 40,000 hours of administrative burden of staff by integrating with the Veterans Benefits Management System eFolder. VR&E is working diligently to develop and deploy a new case management system, the Readiness Employment System, or RES. Through strict governance of the project, in October 24, VR&E launched RES at 4 pilot locations: New York, Little Rock, Muskogee, and Reno. The deployment of RES in October has stayed on schedule and done so under budget. Through integration and automation, as of October 19th, 2024, over 1,000 hours of manual data entry previously computed by all field staff at all regional offices has been eliminated, further reducing administrative burden. VR&E is committed to improving the services we deliver to veterans, improving internal operations, and promoting efficiency. Mr. Chairman, as VA continues to modernize and improve the VR&E program, we look forward to working with Congress to address veterans' concerns and appreciate the support of the subcommittee. This concludes my testimony. My colleague and I welcome any questions you or other members of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Pampern. The written statement of Mr. Pampern will be entered into the hearing record. We're now going to proceed to questionings and ask the members to strictly adhere to the 5-minute rule. I'm going to recognize Ranking Member Levin for 5 minutes.
Thank you,
Any
Mr.
questions you may have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pampern, committee staff has received feedback from veterans, veteran service organizations, school certifying officials regarding the backlogs that veterans face when accessing services. Approximately 15,000 service members transition out of Camp Pendleton in my district each year. And I'm deeply concerned to be hearing about significant backlogs at the San Diego VR&E office. As I mentioned in my opening statement, in my district, we've heard that veterans have to wait for approximately 15 to 18 months for an initial appointment. My staff reached out to your office to get updated wait times for veterans at the San Diego VR&E office back in September, and we haven't heard back. Do you have updated wait times you can share with us now? And if not, can you commit to sending that information to my staff as soon as possible?
Thank you for the question. One, I will certainly be looking into the RFI that you submitted in September to understand.
Looking
where
into
that
it?
is.
What does that mean, sir?
I will find out why a response hasn't been submitted.
Will you provide answers to our
Absolutely.
questions?
Currently, the wait
By
time.
when, Mr. Pampern?
I can give you the San Diego wait time right now. The current San Diego average wait time is 155 days, which is still well above the 60-day target.
Do you think that's acceptable, 155-day wait time?
I do not.
What are you going to do about it?
So we've undertaken a number of things at the national level, and I will ask Mr. Smith as well as from the local level. One of the things that we've done is San Diego has a unique struggle of a large growing caseload and a difficulty in recruiting staff. These are very limited positions that we're able to hire. So one of the things that we've done is we've deployed what we call partner stations and added additional staff to the Albuquerque regional office, the Boise regional office, offices relatively close to the Southern California area where they have an ability to hire and keep staff. And those individuals at those partnering stations are dedicated to support nothing but the San Diego and Southern California region. Not all of those positions have been filled yet, but with the expansion of the degrees, we've seen dramatic growth in the ability to recruit folks.
So if you take those steps, does that lead to those wait times being brought down to the 60-day target?
I think there's more than just that. There's also internal processes that can be streamlined to make things more efficient. So I think it's a combination of people, technology, and process that will drive those wait times down.
So by when can you get people, technology, and process in order to hit your 60-day target?
It would be speculation at this point, and I would have to get back to you.
Well, speculation is better than 155-day wait time. I want to know what I should tell my veterans who are ready to give up on the program because of 15 to 18-month waits to get an initial appointment.
As far as getting it down to under 60 days, honestly, sir, I'm not sure I'd want to give you a number and either not hit it or give you a ridiculous number that's not acceptable.
Can you
I'd like to be able to take that one back and get back to you, sir.
I suggest you do, and I suggest that you share with anybody you have to that 155 days is unacceptable and is leading to veterans in San Diego who are giving up on VR&E. Wouldn't you? If you were a veteran, you had to wait 15 to 18 months. That's not serving our veterans as well as they've served us. So what I'd like, number one, is the next time our staff reaches out, or the chairman's staff reaches out, or any member's staff reaches out, don't just blow us off, give us an answer so I don't have to do this in a public setting. It's not my intent to embarrass you, sir. It's my intent to get answers for the veterans in my district and community. Number two is I would like a roadmap, not just I'll get back to you, but I would like a specific roadmap about the people, the technology, the process, whatever it is that needs to happen. Because when we passed the PACT Act, a lot of this could and should have been anticipated by folks at VA. We knew there would be an uptick in these programs. It's a success that there's an uptick in these programs, but your inability to prepare for this outcome gives me great cause, or great concern and great caution that things are going to change. So I'm looking for a roadmap that I can share with our local community and our local VSOs who are very concerned, as are our national VSOs. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Levin. I now recognize my very good friend, Mr. Mervan from the great state of Indiana.
Staffing in the VRE program appears to be an ongoing issue in the program, and one reason is we understand that you expanded the hiring requirements for counselors. Mr. Pamperin, when did you announce the change in hiring requirements for counselors?
We announced the change last fiscal year and implemented those 5 additional degrees.
So I guess one of the questions is you're faced with a great challenge of a delay of 155 days. You have, is it VCRs?
VRCs. Sir.
VRCs, I'm sorry, I just did the 1980s. VRCs who have a master's program. And then you have normal social workers. And if I read correctly, it is that the VRCs are the only ones, and because of that shortage, that they are the only ones to make the decisions for entitlements, correct? Entitlement decisions?
Correct, sir. A VRC has to make an entitlement decision, but a individual with a master's in social work, as you noted, that is one of the degrees that we expanded to that can qualify.
Okay.
The additional position of the VRS, the Voc Rehab Specialist, that position cannot make entitlement decisions.
Tell me why.
Because they do not have the affirmative education requirement that is necessary.
Can they be trained in order to do that? Because if you're having a difficult time filling those positions, can those individuals that have the education to do that train the individuals with the social work degree, because that's what other industries are doing in shortages, to be able to fulfill the obligation of getting people through quicker?
In the current construct, VRS, the Voc Rehab Specialists, are not allowed to. It does require to make a decision for entitlement for the benefit to be at that master's educated level.
Required by whom? The VA with their own guidelines?
I believe it's in regulation.
Can you find that out?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chairman. It's the first time I got cheered on by my chairman. I didn't intend to do that. Okay. My intentions are to be able to find a solution. Now, going towards the software analysis of the 3 attempts, passed 2 years ago was chairman of technology modernization for the subcommittee and had experience with the electronic medical records. Can someone articulate why the challenges of the software is an ongoing issue and what are the solutions?
Sure. For the previous 2 efforts, there were a number of challenges that I would contend. Lack of clear requirements, contract vehicles. I think what makes this effort different is we spent 10 months, and I know that seems like a long time, but to do our due diligence to really understand what went wrong in the initial, We put together an entire project team between the VR&E staff and...
So, small time limit for me. What did go wrong?
I think in both of those efforts, I think the requirements would not have been able to deliver a case management system.
So within the case management system, was it the training process or was it the software itself?
In the first instance, sir, it was the software. In the second instance, I think it was a combination of the platform and the individuals. The requirements that were built or lack thereof.
Was there resistance to the change from the current system?
We have not encountered any resistance at any of the 4 pilot sites. We have launched a number of virtual roadshows where we've demonstrated it and gotten overwhelmingly positive support. This is a system, as the chairman pointed out, that was promised years ago and should have been delivered years ago. The field wants it and the field needs it.
Okay. So is it the providers? I guess if you had to pinpoint the changing agent, what would you pinpoint would be something that has to change in order to operate to its full function and what you're trying to accomplish?
Training and acceptance to the change, which is why we've created a dedicated staff for the RES team to include a change agent.
But that was my original question, was there resistance to the change?
And as of right now, at none of the pilot sites has there been resistance.
Okay.
I'm talking from a basic change management strategy, sir, the things that we know have to be done to make sure that folks are fully trained and capable of running it, which is keeping them informed, keeping them trained, and up to date on the progress of the RES platform.
So a lot of vague references. This is my last question. When this software was implemented, what was the cause that you said this isn't operating correctly? What was the red flag that popped up for you? Is it part of the, obviously it's part of the reason for the 155 delay, but what was the red flag that said we cannot continue on this path?
Sir, I wasn't in this position for either of the 2 iterations. For the second iteration, again, I wasn't here for that, but there was a lack of confidence in the ability to make a payment and an accurate payment. And obviously, if you're not doing that, the system is not working, and we cannot not pay an accurate rate to a veteran. And I believe that, as well as delays, were the 2 overriding factors that the organization made for discontinuing that previous effort. We have not encountered those issues with RES to date.
Okay. I thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize my friend from the great state of Kentucky, Mr. McGarvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with all of the questions asked by my colleagues up here, I just want to start with a really simple question. Who's in charge of this program?
I am the executive director of the program, sir. I'm in charge of it.
Then why don't you have answers for how to fix it?
Sir, I think we do, and that's part of our 6-point plan that is leading into our strategic roadmap. There's not just one answer. We could put more bodies in there, but counselors in the field are still doing manual math, manual data entry. We've got too many forms and complicated processes. As we've been going through RES development, and even prior to that, we've gone through the elimination of forms. So it's not just one simple answer. It's a combination of we need a whole lot of things to be fixed in the people, process, and technology space.
It's not one simple answer, but it seems to be an ongoing problem. And it's not a problem that developed last week. And you've known about these problems, right? You heard Mr. Levin talk about the fact that there are veterans in San Diego who are waiting 15 to 18 months to hear back, which is completely unacceptable. But this is in line. We have a letter here from the Student Veterans of America. They did a survey in which they show that nearly half of the respondents, 48%, reported meeting with their VRC, their counselor, their veteran resource counselor, within 1 to 3 months of entering the program. However, almost 20% waited 4 to 6 months or longer. 20%, which of course we can guess what that means. And then, of course, it said that 38% reported that their counselor was rarely or never available, and only 1 in 4, 25% of the people using this program, are saying that they can always get a hold of the people they need to access these benefits. I just remind you of who we're serving. We are not just serving our veterans. We are serving our veterans who have a service-related disability. These are our men and women who were willing to put on a uniform to sacrifice everything for us, and in some cases sacrificed a great deal. And this program, which, we have a letter here from the VFW, they say, the Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Program is incredibly successful. VR&E has been described by veterans as a life-changing opportunity that puts them on the path for success. But then even the VFW immediately follows that sentence by saying, however, many informed the VFW they did not receive sufficient guidance to navigate this process. They complain about the amount of time it takes for our veterans to get these benefits that they have earned. And we're at the holidays right now. You mentioned that wait times in San Diego are 155 days. If I told you that you could go on Amazon right now to get a holiday present for somebody, but the shipping time was 155 days, would you do it?
No, sir.
Okay. What happens when these veterans can't get these benefits in a timely manner, when they are waiting 4 to 6 months or longer, 155 days? It makes them less likely, and this is shown in the studies, this is shown in the surveys we have in front of us, it makes them less likely to access these benefits, to get not just what they want. The example I gave you was a want. What they need and what they want is meaningful employment after the service. And so we want to help you guys out, but it seems like we're always getting people up here who are saying, we'll get back to you, we'll look into that, we'll take care of that, there's a 6-point plan, but we have data that says veterans haven't been accessing their benefits for 15 to 18 months. When is that going to get better?
Sir, even in the instance of San Diego, with the addition of the partner stations, we've seen those numbers already start to go down. Again, the wait times are unacceptable. And I do believe, which is the reason I wanted to run this program, that it is the gold standard. It does change veterans' lives. It has previously been underutilized, and we are seeing the exact opposite. Since 2001, we've seen an 82.5% increase in our applications. That just was never predicted. While we predicted PACT Act growth, you base it on historical trends, we've never seen growth like this. We've never seen levels of our participation like this. We absolutely need to get better, and I think the 6-point plan that we've implemented and implemented half of it thus far, and our strategic roadmap are going to get us to where we need to be.
And I see my time is running out. We want to help you with that. I know that we do share the same goals, and I appreciate you coming in front of the committee today. But we do share those goals, and we want to make sure that the counselors and veterans are not just relying solely on some of the technology, that we have more counselors, that we have measures in place to ensure that veterans have that access to the essential one-on-one counseling, that we get this right. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back to you, but obviously this is something we definitely want to work with you guys on to make sure our veterans get that incredibly important, timely access to these benefits that they've earned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGarvey. The gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. I think my colleagues did a very good job of pointing out the unacceptable nature of the wait times, right? You're doing 4 pilot programs right now. What's the average wait time at those 4 pilot programs?
Give me 1 second. I can give you.
The answer is 34.5 days. And Mr. Pamper, I'm just going to say this. Okay, Mr. McGarvey aptly pointed out, you're in charge, right? If you're coming up here touting this program, which is allegedly trending in the correct direction, that should have been on the tip of your tongue, okay? So we're here because of the abject failure, the consistent abject failure of the Veterans Affairs Administration to be able to put together IT projects and run them. It's a historically accurate statement. So there's all these other things we can talk about, money and stuff, but I want to talk about some philosophical things here because Mr. McGarvey came over to my office this morning. We talked for about half an hour or so. And it was about, what's the difference? The problem at the Veterans Affairs Administration, I've been chairing the subcommittee for 2 years now. And we made a joke the other day in the office that I could change the title of my binder, and I could change the date, and I'd hardly have to change any of the content because you guys are coming up here consistently saying the same stuff. I'll get back to you. I don't know. Things are working. We need more money. We need more people. My bad. And nothing is going to change at the Veterans Affairs Administration until we change the people at the Veterans Affairs Administration. So are you guys political appointees?
No, sir.
You are not. Are you Schedule F employees?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any negative feedback mechanism at the Veterans Affairs Administration? For instance, this program goes on and on and on and on and on, and the people that were responsible for writing the contracts and the people that are responsible for approving those contracts, have they been fired?
Sir, I
You don't know. We don't know who they are, do we? Were they censured? We don't know. Did they get a harshly worded email or potentially a disparaging remark cast at them in passing in a hallway? We're talking about billions and billions of dollars that is being fraudulently, and I'm going to use the word again, corruption. There's corruption in the VA. And until that goes away, none of this is going to change. None of it. So I told you yesterday, and I want to say it publicly, I'm putting everybody at the Veterans Affairs Administration on notice. I can't tell you I'm going to fire you and all that stuff. It's an executive branch thing. I can't do that. That's not what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. There's a new sheriff in town. And you guys are going to start being held directly, personally accountable. If anybody that's going to occupy with this new administration in the White House, if they actually care about what they're doing, and I know for certain that they do, I suggest that there's a lot of people at the VA that better start reviewing their resume. And that gives me no pleasure to say that at all. But I am so sick and damn tired of asking the same questions to the same people and getting the same answers. Because every single dollar that you guys throw into a fireplace is a dollar that cannot be applied to giving our veterans the benefits that they earned. And I don't even have a question for you guys. I'm just, honest to goodness, across the board, I am disgusted. I don't know what else to say. I really don't. Ranking Member Levin had to step out to another committee for a commitment, and so in his stead, Mr. Mirvan, I would like to recognize you for any closing statements you may have.
It's good on a closing statement. I don't have a closing statement other than ultimately, the message here is we have to change things. There were some simple things that I was able to identify that I just want to use this time to make sure you acknowledge also. The simple fact that there's no prompt on the 1-800 number for the VA to be able to get to your office is something that's concerning. You would think that we could change that, and that would be immediately. Ultimately, as I mentioned, hiring individuals that could fulfill the obligation of the goals of making sure our veterans receive the entitlements is something that is a priority, getting the software in place. In closing, just want to make sure that you understand the severity of where we are and the action that is needed to be taken with urgency in order to get to where we need to cut down those wait times. With that, action must be taken. And I thank you very much.
The gentleman yields back. I'm going to make one suggestion before I dismiss this panel. You're doing 4 pilots. I recommend that you start a 5th one, and it's in San Diego. when you recognize the spot with the most egregious example of this ineptitude, it's like, I was a Navy SEAL for a while. I'd go straight to the biggest problem and solve that one. So that's just a recommendation. Obviously, you guys can do what you want because you've been doing what you want regardless of what we've been saying to you for at least the 2 years I've been in Congress. You people are dismissed. I'd like to have the second panel up here, please. On our second panel, we're going to hear from the following witnesses: Ms. Julie Howell, Associate Legislative Director for Government Relations at Paralyzed Veterans of America, and Mr. Keith Glindeman, President of National Association of Veterans Program Administrators. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? Hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, and let the record reflect. You may be seated. Thank you. Let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Now, I'm just going to say something. These committee hearings can be pretty intimidating, and I understand that. And you can be nervous and stuff. But I do want you to know, and Morgan said it earlier, we really want everybody here. We want the VA to succeed. We want you to succeed. So if that helps put your mind at ease, please know that this is a friendly audience, ma'am. So I'd like to now recognize Ms. Howell for 5 minutes to deliver her testimony.
Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Mervan, and members of the Subcommittee, Paralyzed Veterans of America appreciates this opportunity to discuss the effectiveness of the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program, or VR&E. VR&E assists disabled veterans in finding meaningful and lasting employment despite incurring disabilities as a result of their military service. The services and supports available to veterans with catastrophic disabilities are critical in ensuring successful employment outcomes. Prior to the passage of the Americans with Disability Act in 1990, widespread protections and federal law prohibiting disability-based employment discrimination did not exist. This means that just over a generation ago, disabled veterans lacked federal protections and guarantees that are available today. Despite these protections, barriers to employment still exist for disabled veterans. This is one of the many reasons why VR&E is such an important program. Historically, the common perception was that VR&E should be the crown jewel of employment programs. However, it was underutilized. I'm pleased to say that word has gotten out as evidenced by the record number of applications VR&E has seen in the past few years. With enrollment numbers sitting around 170,000, it's clear that disabled veterans are aware of the VR&E program and are eager to engage with those dedicated staff and counselors available to them. For the sake of my time, I'll focus my comments on VR&E program improvement areas that Congress and VA should prioritize. The first suggestion PVA has is to remove the 12-year delimiting date for VR&E eligibility. Doing so would eliminate the subjectivity in determining whether a veteran has an employment handicap or a serious employment handicap, reducing the number of veterans who might be denied access due to an arbitrary date. Research shows that service-connected disabilities exacerbate over time, and the delimiting date is an unnecessary barrier for disabled veterans who are struggling to find suitable employment due to their service-connected disabilities. Our next recommendation is to reduce the minimum education requirements for veteran success on campus or VSOC counselors. Currently, a VSOC counselor has the same education requirements and job description as a traditional vocational rehabilitation counselor or a VRC, which requires a master's degree in vocational rehabilitation counseling or similar degrees. PVA recommends that Congress pass H.R. 8646, the Modernizing Veteran on-Campus Experience Act of 2024, which reduces this education requirement. The change may encourage VSOC counselors to return to the traditional role of a VRC should they decide to, filling possible vacancies with already trained VRCs. Conversely, such a change could also be an employment pipeline for newly hired VSOCs who wish to become VRCs in the future. It could also create a new federal employment opportunity for student veterans who have recently graduated to serve as VSOCs. Many veterans who use VR&E see intrinsic value in helping veterans achieve their goals. We should lean in on this opportunity to increase the number of veterans helping veterans. However, if the education requirements are reduced, PVA suggests removal of the language in the amended bill authorizing VSOCs to carry a caseload of 25 individuals. Complex cases should remain with trained VRCs. The next area of improvement PVA sees that Congress should improve is the subsistence rate for disabled veterans by tying the VR&E rates to those offered by the post-9/11 GI Bill. This disparity creates significant administrative burdens for VRCs who are forced to calculate payments on their own, and tying VR&E to the same rate as GI Bill recipients would remove a financial barrier and improve program outcomes for veterans and staff alike. Mr. Chairman, the last point I'd like to make is that at every VR&E hearing, VSOs, members of Congress, and the VR&E program itself have stressed the need for increased resources for additional counselors to maintain the 1:125 ratio. The decentralization of hiring priorities makes this almost impossible at a local level. VBA should ensure that VR&E staffing needs are prioritized in the field to ensure that veterans are able to have reliable engagement with their counselors. By all accounts, I am a VR&E success story. I wouldn't be here today without the GI Bill and the VR&E programs. While I battled with my counselors and experienced many of the same issues we're highlighting today, VR&E changed the trajectory of my life, and I'm dedicated to the sustainability of this program for future disabled veterans. This concludes my testimony. PVA again thanks you for the opportunity to share our views on the VR&E program, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
The gentlelady yields. The chair now recognizes Mr. Glindeman. You're now for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony, sir.
Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Mervin, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to speak at today's hearing on examining the effectiveness of the Veterans Readiness and Employment VRE program. My name is Keith Glindeman, President of the National Association of Veterans Program Administrators. Our membership is comprised of school certifying officials and school administrators from over 400 colleges and universities across the nation, representing over 500,000 student veterans. Recently, in preparation for this hearing, NAPA conducted a short survey of our membership and their experiences with the VR&E. We found issues with tungsten and VR&E approvals, schools still experiencing barriers in returning VA funding, VRC counselors who feel overworked and heavy caseloads, and the communication for schools and student veterans with the VRCs at an all-time low. NAPA member schools and the students that we represent feel the same pressure by a lack of VRE communication, shortage of VRCs in a system that has not grown when the population using it has. The recent passage of the PACT Act has allowed many veterans suffering from the toxic exposures of war to receive a VA disability rating and in turn qualify for Chapter 31 benefits under the VR&E program. While NAPA applauds the passage of this long overdue legislation, we also wanted to report what's being observed and experienced in the field. IHLs are seeing that the Chapter 31 program that was already stretched thin pulled even further. VRCs have shared that some NAPA member schools that they are overburdened, have extremely high and difficult to manage caseloads, and that they feel overburdened and burned out. Chapter 31 disabled student veterans are reporting a lack of communications with their VRC, delays in their approvals, delayed payments, and increased stress, both mentally and financially. SCOs are reporting that they have difficulty contacting VRCs and obtaining timely authorizations for their students. During the NAPA survey, over 78% of our SCOs responded that they had issues communicating with their VRCs. Not only do schools have this communication barrier, but Chapter 31 students themselves do. When there is a turnover of VRCs nationwide, there is rarely notification to the student or to the school that the VRC has changed or left. Student veterans have shared that their emails or phone calls go unanswered, and schools have had to contact VRC supervisors if they're even able to be known to help them receive their benefit. During the NAPA survey, over 89% of participants reported that their students had difficulty in contacting their VRC, which has led to a delay in their educational benefits. VRC communications have shown a trend in providing less contact information. Emails and purchase order authorizations, have been omitting phone numbers on the communications that directly go to the VREs. PO authorizations without an email address to a VRC or instead a generic email inbox would be placed on there. This information is vital so that a school can or a student can call and discuss the specific student's academic needs, payment issues, or to get a new PO number issued to the student when a new term is getting ready to start. NAPA recommends that updated field directory of all VRCs and supervisors be published on the va.gov website and maintained. Regarding VRE, there is no standardized training provided to the SCO, or it seems the VRC. NAPA members have reported that the VRC will give student veterans incorrect information and not truly understand how Chapter 31 works. This includes conflicting information from one VRC to another. NAPA recommends there needs to be standardized national training for both the VRC and SCOs who administer the benefit. VR&E updates should be updated in their handbook and standardized procedures and support information made available. Tungsten information is not user-friendly for the SCO, and we have difficulty finding student information in the system because of limited identifying information. PO authorizations sent to schools only have a PO authorization number and no student information. It barely, just in the email and the subject, it has a number. You have to go into the Tungsten system, do a search based off of the ID number that was sent, the authorization number, and then you have to look at the date range it was sent, and then you can find out what student it's for. They're also, with many of these being sent to incorrect emails, or not received at all. By not being able to search Tungsten for PI, it stops benefits in their tracks until a SCO can locate the appropriate one to be able to search to get the authorization. We recommend that the VA work with Tungsten to develop better criteria for PO authorization. And lastly, NAPA recommends we increase the number of VRC employees to better serve the increased VR&E student population. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Glindeman. The written statement of Mr. Glindeman will be entered into the record, as will Ms. Howells. We'll now proceed to questioning. I recognize Ranking Member Levin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Howell, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. The independent budget for fiscal years 25 to 26 recommended that the VR&E program should create and hire 300 administrative support staff positions to help reduce the administrative burden on VR&E counselors. Why do you feel these positions, assuming you do feel these positions, would be helpful in the VR&E program?
Thank you for that question, sir. The ballpark number we got for 300 was an estimated 1 assistant to every 3 counselors. So we sort of did ballpark figures on that. We were hoping that the hiring of these support staff would help eliminate some of that administrative burden. Not every VR&E participant has a super complex case. If someone's doing well in school, they only need a monthly check-in. That could be a support staff that takes care of that. As far as I'm aware, several VRSs have been hired in the field. That has increased fiscal accuracy for the program because counselors now have the ability to put their head down and do some of the work. We would love to see that more support staff get hired across the system. We don't know exactly where these folks are, But I think as we wait for the rollout of the modernization efforts, these are folks that can sort of get us to that point. And again, not only have they increased fiscal accuracy, but counselors are freed up to do a little bit more of that more complex casework.
Thank you for that. What recommendations would you like to see put in place to VR&E, where particularly, for instance, where veterans and school certifying officials can't reach their counselors, or where veterans need more time with their counselors?
I hate to say it yet again, but we need more counselors. We have seen exponential growth in this program. For years, we've said, oh, well, people should use this. Well, they're using it, and we can't expect the work to get done with the same workforce. It doesn't, that math's never gonna shake out. If we hire additional counselors, particularly in high veteran concentrated areas, that frees up so much more availability for counselors to dedicate their time to those complex cases for veterans who really struggle to find appropriate employment that meets their physical needs based on their service-connected disabilities. This also gets much more complex when you think about workplace accommodations. What is the level of expectation for employers? Like, a VR&E counselor is not just ticking boxes for people and finding them a school.
Right.
There's so much more to that. And I think when we look at staffing ratios or needs, we need to consider the fact that all of these 125 people on this desk, they're all dynamic and they all have very different needs. And for a PVA member that has the highest level of need, that might take a little bit more time. And I think if we staff it appropriately, if we ever actually maintained the 1 to 125 ratio, particularly locally, not nationally, then counselors have the bandwidth to engage in those more complex cases.
Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Glinderman, let me turn to you. In your written testimony, you indicated that many of your members have issues with the invoice payment processing system that VR&E uses to authorize services and process invoices. What recommendations would you like to see VR&E implement to assist school certifying officials in certifying and processing payments for student veterans?
You know, I think the first thing, sir, is that we need to have more standardized training. School certifying officials and the bursar's offices that normally handle the processing of payments don't necessarily come into the position with training already established. So I think if the VA were to develop standardized training that was taught at their level, and then schools could have additional package training that it could be taught at their level, it would be more comprehensive for processing the benefit in a timely manner. The other portion with that is making sure that the authorizations are flowing in a timely manner as well. What we're seeing is a stopgap in the system when a PO authorization doesn't come in for an existing student. Today we've talked a lot about the student trying to become into the system, but we have many students who aren't able to continue in the system because their funding's put on hold by not having that new authorization.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the continued input. We're trying to get this right, and I thank our friends at VA for staying to listen to our VSO's concerns. I want to take just a second and also thank Allison Bernheimer, who is our fellow, and this is going to be her last hearing with us, but she is going now to fix the VR&E program, is my understanding. So this is very timely, this is perfect, and we're very grateful to you for spending this time with us, Allison.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, and I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes Mr. Mervan for 5 minutes, sir.
Ms. Howell, you had mentioned that you were a byproduct or benefited from this program. Can you do just a minute or two, a little bit of deeper dive in that process and how it has benefited you?
Thank you for the question, sir. When I got out of the military, I became a chef. It just so happens that every service-connected disability I had was exacerbated by 12 years in a kitchen. Because of that, I found out about the VR&E program upon completion of my undergrad degree. All of the issues that we have highlighted today, I ran into. I had a rather combative counselor who, the last time I had the honor of testifying at a VR&E oversight hearing, I kind of ripped him apart. I was very blunt about my encounters. I had to do a lot of the legwork for myself to prove that the path that I thought might be suitable for myself would adhere to my service-connected disabilities. He had other opinions on that. it was a battle. Once I was finally in the program, I was part of one of the pilots for the last IT upgrade or modernization effort. I have sort of seen this program from being rejected and trying again through the processes that exist that are intended to sort of not necessarily weed folks out, but they want people to be successful in this program. And you have to do a certain element of work to even cross that gap. And once you're in, that's a whole nother separate world of conflicts and battles that you have to overcome. Like I said in my opening statement, I'm very grateful for the VR&E program. It is wildly ironic to me that I now testify on behalf. But I think as long as veterans are clear-eyed about what is expected of them to be successful in this program, that's their side. But VR&E and VA has an obligation to make sure that if a veteran overcomes all of those barriers, they have an obligation to be in touch with them. They are the other side of that coin. And when veterans are not heard from, when they feel like they are not listened to, when they can't get a hold of their counselor, this is a symbiotic relationship that we need to find the balance on.
Okay. Then, in your testimony, the written testimony, you had mentioned basically for the VRC positions, training and a new process in order for them to be more accessible and to be able to, the new VRC should be fully trained in approximately 3 years. That was one of the recommendations. When VRCs are overwhelmed with their caseload, it directly impacts the ability to onboard and train new VRCs. Can you kind of do a little deeper dive in that paragraph and what you mean?
Yes, sir, thank you. I think expecting someone to come out of a standardized training for a new job and be aces right out of the gate is naive. I don't know anybody that's able to do that. All employment requires on-the-job training. It requires some peer advice. It requires feedback from your manager. And I think that as VR&E works to standardize that onboarding process, as was highlighted by my counterpart, as they sort of work out the wrinkles in that, as they become more efficient in their onboarding and their training for that standardization of understanding among their cadre of employees, that's going to help the long-term onboarding for folks. And I think, lost my train of thought. We can't expect these folks to just know what they're doing. It takes an element of time. It takes an understanding and going through some of these more complex cases one by one to understand, to see patterns and to see what works and to see what fails. And I think we need to rely on them and their expertise and their experiences to know what's going to be beneficial, what's going to work, what should they avoid. And that just takes time and it takes engagement. And once we have that onboarding and training standardized, I think that will alleviate quite a bit of the burden that our counselors are experiencing. And by eliminating that, our veterans have a better outcome and better relationship with their counselor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony today.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. McGarvey for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And, from the previous panel too, I think you heard all of us want to get this right. And one of the things that I'm seeing in this is a lack of consistency, right? A lack of consistent access to counselors, a lack of consistent and reliable access to these benefits, to this program, which actually does have an incredible track record. Ms. Howell, you even said, when this program gets it right, it really does an amazing job for our veterans. And so what I think we need to do is not just build consistency because it is what our veterans deserve. We need to build this consistency because that's what's going to build trust in the VA. And we want our veterans to know that we are honoring the promise we made to take care of them, and we are honoring that promise through these services they're able to access from the VA. Your testimony describes a lack of consistency. And within the program, there's a lack of consistency related to counselors, to counselor availability, to communication, to even the way that benefits are calculated. Could you discuss then some of the recommendations on how the program can better ensure consistency in both of these areas of concern, sort of starting with that communication with the counselor availability?
Thank you for the question, sir. I think when it comes to standardization of communications, we're never going to get that exactly right. I think the best we can hope for is somewhere above 70%. Not all VR&E counselors are created equal. I think the chairman can attest to that. Sometimes you get rock stars and sometimes you get rocks. I think that, again, if we standardize that training, if we standardize some training, if we make sure that our counselors understand how to engage with veterans with complex cases, that leaves them better off to engage with the folks that don't have such a complex case. Many veterans that are in VR&E need a monthly check-in and they go about finishing their education requirements. They need substantially less hand-holding than some other folks. But I think, again, particularly for PVA members, that communication is so critical when you might be running into barriers, you might have online platforms that are not accessible to you. You know, you have to think about a varying level of disabilities for these veterans. And I think while we can improve the communication efforts, I'm putting a lot of faith and stock into the rollout of this most recent modernization effort. I think that will free up a lot of capacity to make those relationships more robust. Again, we're talking 45,000 additional veterans on the books with no additional staff. Something's going to fall out of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing up the fact that not every counselor is the same. Not every veteran's case is the same. We're not producing nails on an assembly line here. That we're actually, but recognizing that's the case and putting some systems in place to improve it should have been done yesterday. One thing I think we want to help, and I think we all have to give some grace here. Let's not be afraid to get caught trying. And trying to get this better for our veterans. So what about the consistency in the way that benefits are calculated? Could you talk a little bit, that you talked about the lack of knowledge and understanding regarding the VR&E program among veterans themselves and family members. Even when the VFW in their letter to us told us word of mouth is how people are finding about, some are finding about their classes and that sort of thing. And the information online doesn't fully explain the process. What are some steps you would take there to make it better?
Thank you for the question, sir. As I highlighted in my written testimony, I think a way to solve this problem would be to tie VR&E subsistence rate to the post-9/11 GI Bill. I'm under the assumption that this has been a cost savings measure. However, if you are a disabled veteran who served before 9/11 and you engage with VR&E, you're making about $700 to $800 a month in subsistence allowance. If you are a veteran with a 10-20-30% disability rating, that's you trying to be successful in education, finding employment, while living below the poverty line almost nationally. If we eliminate that financial restriction for participating veterans, that's going to improve outcomes when you're not worried about how you're going to pay your rent, your bills, how you're going to buy food. And this gets exponentially more complicated if somebody has a dependent child, which only accounts for potentially $80 additional a month for that VR&E rate.
Thank you so much. That is very instructive. We'll take it back. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Ms. Howell, in your testimony, you're doing good. You feeling all right? It's a lot better now, isn't it? You just got to get into it. I'm telling you, right? I appreciate you supporting my bill, H.R. 8646, the Modernizing Veterans On-Campus Experience Act of 2024. And I want you to know that this committee listens to you guys because we amended the language of that bill to remove the limit on how many veterans VSOC counselors could see. And I think that's going to be helpful. The one thing that I want to ask you about is both of you have mentioned standardized training, right? And the fact you need to have a master's for this and all that stuff. How long do you guys, and we'll start with Ms. Howell, ladies first. How long do you think a standardized training program would take to make someone a capable counselor? I mean, obviously, training is an ongoing process, blah, 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 you know what I mean? The initial block training, how long do you think that would take?
Well, that's an interesting question, sir. Thank you for it. I think we have to be very clear about, are we talking VSOCs or are we talking VRCs?
Let's start with VSOCs and then VRCs.
Okay, for a VSOC counselor, that job description, while it matches a VRC's, what they do at work is very different. They are the touch point for student veterans, so they have to have an understanding of all the benefits and everything else, and some of that can be OJT, but they need, I don't know that I can give you an estimation on standardized training for a VSOC.
I mean, like, it's gonna take a month of sit-down didactics and then stuff like that, right?
It'll probably take a month or two, yeah.
So let's say 3 months. Give it a month? It's holiday season, I don't know, you know? So let's say 3 months. What about VRCs? And I'm not holding this to you.
No, I appreciate that, sir. For VRCs, I've never seen their training modules. I imagine it's somewhere beyond a couple months. Again, because you have to understand the benefit, you have to understand the intricacies.
Let's just say it's 6 months.
Sure.
Mr. Glindeman, would you agree with those rough time estimates?
Yes, sir, I think, absolutely, I think 6 months for the second. And for the VSOC, they're in that immersed environment, so there's that symbiotic learning kind of thing by being in alongside SCOs that are also explaining the benefits, so they're picking up on on how to explain.
And we
the
can
benefits.
agree the initial bottleneck of getting people in the programs is this, right? The initial bottleneck.
Yes.
Okay, so check me out. How long does it take for you to get a master's degree?
2 years.
2 years? So you could spend 1/4 of the time with an individual, get them trained and up to speed. If you just did what you guys just said, right? So we will find out who put this artificial thing, this limit, and making sure that you have to have X amount of educational stuff. And what we have to do, the state of Wisconsin has one of the best, if not the best, vocational training system in the country with our tech schools. And the tech schools like this, you're gonna be a plumber, right? You're gonna be a carpenter, pipe fitter, welder, whatever it is. And you don't spend a lot of time learning about 13th century French poetry, you know, in the welding shop. But we produce excellent welders. So unfortunately, what we've done here is we've created this self-licking ice cream cone with increased amounts of educational requirements that both of you, who are the subject matter experts in your field, say is not required. And we gotta stop doing that. Go ahead.
Hey, sir, yeah, I agree with that. You know, in a lot of our positions in higher ed, we see that X amount of experience in lieu of the academic requirement, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so the training could, especially if we're bringing people up, we're raising them from those other positions, from the VRS positions, and we're grooming them to the next level.
That's right. That's called fleeting up in the Navy. Hold on, Ms. Howell, we got 24 seconds. I want to say one thing for the record. You mentioned rock stars, and what was the other one? Rocks? Well, I want to say this publicly, and I'm only going to say her first name, but my counselor, her first name was Ann. She was the former, not the latter. She's a rock star, and I'm very proud of her, as I am with the vast, vast majority of the employees at the VA. Vast majority. So we're gonna. My time has expired here, and I think we got some really good feedback from you guys, and we went through your written testimony, and it was brilliant. So I want to thank you all for attending today, and for all of you working with the subcommittee to improve the lives of veterans and dependents during the 118th Congress, both sides of the aisle. You guys know that this is a nonpartisan committee. I do appreciate the discussion today. We absolutely know that some things have to change, and nothing's going to change until we change the people at the VA. That's a fact. I believe that we've accomplished the goal today, and I think that we have clearly moved the ball forward throughout this session of Congress, and I believe that that is a direct result of the working relationship that I have with the man that I respect tremendously, my ranking member, Mr. Levin. So with that, I'd like to yield to you, sir, for any closing comments you may have.
I thank the chairman for his friendship and his leadership. over these past couple of years. I think we have made a lot of progress. I was so pleased to see the Elizabeth Dole package, for example, get across the finish line, and follows a legacy that for the last 6 years I've been very proud to be a small steward of, which is to get things done for our veterans in a bipartisan, often nonpartisan, collaborative way, where we're not subject to the whims of news cycles, but rather focused on the good of our veterans and our service members. And I thank the VA. We don't always make it easy at these things, but I look forward to a plan to get that 155 days down. And I thank our VSOs. They're a pleasure to work with, and I wish everybody, including all the staff on both sides, a very happy holiday season. With that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and thank you all again for participating in today's hearing. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is adjourned. Okay, I gotta scram, dude. Me too. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Thank you. Thank you. Where are you going, dude? Thank you. Where are you going? I got to go to a nuclear waste, the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, that's
You've
great.
been very supportive, actually, of our efforts at DOE.